How's everyone doing today? I am Michael Gibbons, giving my book review thoughts on the second part of Jeff Pearlman's book, Sweetness. Second, just like the first part, it covered a certain amount of time. The first part was all about his childhood, growing up, high school, things like that. The whole second part was one chapter dedicated to each year of his college life. So his freshman year, playing in the same backfield as his brother Eddie. Sophomore year, being the guy. Junior season, being the guy again, but more so now, starting to get more attention. And then senior year with the Heisman push, and then meeting his wife Connie and another relationship he had where he gave the girl a promise ring, and eventually, after a lot of other kind of stuff went on, eventually the girl's mom told Walter that he wasn't good enough for her daughter, and how that very much motivated him to make something of himself, whether it was on the field or just in life in general. And something I didn't know was Walter finished all his classes. He technically graduated after his junior year. His senior year, while he was trying to win the Heisman, was actually taking graduate classes already. And I mean, that's very impressive because it's something you don't really know about Walter. You always think of Walter as the football player and as the businessman, but he took school very seriously. So it was very interesting. I know as having a younger brother who, actually my brother and I are the same difference in age as Eddie and Walter were. So when I was a senior in high school, my brother was a freshman. And it would have been very cool we didn't go to the same high schools, but it would have been very cool if we had gone to the same high schools and had a chance to play together or even practice together. It would have been so cool. Or in college, if I didn't get hurt so much that if I went to the same college as my brother and we were able to play on the same team, and we were both offensive linemen. He was a tackle, I was a guard. He was a D tackle, D end, so was I on defense. It would have been so cool to line up and actually play with your brother. I mean, it's just like, Ken Griffey Jr. and his father playing. I mean, it's just one of those things. It's so cool that even though they played the same position, they were able to make it work. And it's really something how his college coach really taught Walter, bring the pain. Don't get hit. You deliver the hit. And listen to these guys talk about, the defensive players just talking about how, Walter would just destroy them. He'd come through the line and they'd try to wrap up his legs. And they thought they had him tackled. And next thing they know, they look up and he's 20 yards down the field scoring a touchdown. And what's really amazing is Jackson State is nothing nowadays. And it was kind of thought of nothing back then, except being a black school, kind of like Grambling was. But there are so many pro players that Walter played with or played against. I think he had like 20 teammates throughout his 4 years of college that went on to play somewhere in the NFL. And the most interesting part was finishing the last chapter of part 2 and then reading the first page of part 3, which is a quote from Bill Walsh talking to some player who was coming out to try out with the Bears. He was leaving Cincinnati. He was going to sign with the Bears, and it was Walter's rookie year. And Bill Walsh said, "Watch out. That guy's going to change the NFL. He's going to be something special." And this was before Walter ever took a snap in the NFL. Bill Walsh, who, look at his coaching tree. He knew what he was talking about. Already knew. So, part 1 was interesting because there was a lot of stuff you didn't know. Part 2 was a little bit more stuff about how Walter became the player that we all know he was. Part 3 is about 200 pages, all about his time, his whole career, his time in the NFL with the Chicago Bears. And it's going to be very interesting to read about stuff that you thought you knew. Even though I was pretty young, Walter retired, while I was still, before I was 10 years old. But even, you hear these stories and whatnot, so it's going to be interesting to see kind of what what didn't I know? What did I find out new about her during his time with the Bears? So far, there's been very little controversial stuff. Some maybe little things. Oh, Walter said this in the book, but really in his autobiography, but really it was this. The one thing you really didn't know, and because Walter was kind of quiet, you knew he was a prankster. But I mean, he was a dancer. I mean, he almost won. I mean, he was on American Bandstand type shows, and I mean, it was I mean, he was just so quiet and so, I mean, looked always so professional and whatnot that you really wouldn't imagine that Walter would kind of cut loose and break down and start dancing. But yeah, part 3 is going to be very interesting. And then my guess is there probably won't be too much controversial stuff. Maybe something in these next 200 pages. But then part 4 is his post career, so the Hall of Fame and retirement and all that stuff, which is from all the previews and excerpts that were released. That's where a lot of controversy came from. And then the part 5 is probably going to be very sad. It's the end of his life. It's his death, and it's going to be probably a lot to do with what Perlman thought when he did that interview with him back then, when he was still just working at SI doing an interview with Walter Payton, and when he came to the door and thought it was a 70-year-old man and not one of the greatest running backs, possibly the greatest running back of all time. So hopefully these are going to be a lot quicker. I was kind of distracted reading a couple other books at the same time, but those are all done. So Sweetness is the only book I'm reading, so hopefully I'll have maybe the next 200 pages done by the end of the week. Depends on what's going on. And then part 4 and part 5 should get done pretty quickly. So maybe by the end of the year I'll have this book done. And we can move on to the Joe Pa book or Bobby Bowden or something else. So make sure you check out all my thoughts, themgexperience.com, Da Chicago Fan on Twitter, DA Chicago Fan. And you can check me out every Monday at 4 o'clock talking Bears on my Bears Blitz show that's on Blog Talk Radio. And every Friday at 9:30 in the morning, you can hear me talking Blackhawks. And you can always find all my writing either on my site or on Bleacher Report. I'm a feature columnist for the Chicago Bulls. So that's about it. Until I get to part 3, I'll talk to you guys later. And I forgot to hit stop record.